Storage units are where people hide the things they can't bring themselves to throw away, but don't want to look at, like old furniture and boxes of papers. It is where they stash old family photos and relics from a past life. Everything gets packed up and moved to a climate-controlled room where objects just sit without anyone ever having to think about them. That is the innocent version, the one that describes most of these units almost all the time. But they are also where people stash what they cannot afford to lose, because letting go of something forever is harder than it looks. Sometimes they just can't bring themselves to destroy it. They prefer to keep it hidden out of reach and far from where detectives would first look. Reports indicate federal agents executed a search on Annie Guthrie's storage units. Inside, they uncovered one specific item that supposedly didn't fit in with the rest. This single item became a critical thread in an investigation that has spent months piecing together forensic clues to build a case. The real question isn't just what this object is, it's why it was there. They need to find out how long it sat there and what its presence in that exact spot says about how deep this cover-up really goes. To understand why, we have to look at how these units become central to forensics in concealment cases. This exact methodology explains why investigators targeted that specific location. When detectives suspect a cover-up and physical evidence suggests someone chose to hide items rather than destroy them, they don't just limit their search to the main property. They map out every single location the suspect controls or once controlled. They check every space they pay for and every address linked to their name, as these rentals always leave financial footprints. That means looking closely at monthly rent payments, card charges to storage facilities, and automatic bank withdrawals. On a bank statement, these recurring transactions reveal whether a suspect has quietly maintained a rental for months or even years. In this case, forensic financial analysis allegedly exposed the complete transaction history of Annie Guthrie. That ledger mapped out exactly what she paid for, detailing every recurring expense. It tracked exactly where her money flowed, so if Annie had multiple storage units, those payments showed up clearly. With those records in hand, investigators know exactly which facilities and which unit numbers to target. They know how long the lease has been active, and they arrive with a warrant and a highly specific target. This was no shot in the dark. It was the direct result of forensic accounting pointing to a highly specific location that required closer inspection. Now consider how a routine inventory works inside a unit and how an odd object suddenly stands out. Federal agents don't just dig through boxes. Everything is meticulously documented, photographed, and catalogued with absolute precision. They don't just analyze items for what they are, but for how they fit in with everything else around them. Detectives are trying to determine if the items inside that space tell a coherent story. Most people store belongings from one specific era, grouping objects that naturally belong together in a single space. Almost every unit has an internal logic boxes from a move, old furniture from a past relationship, or files from a defunct business. When you view them together, the pieces connect. They fit. They represent a chapter of life packed up and left behind. So when something doesn't fit, seasoned investigators notice instantly. The object itself doesn't even have to be flashy or eye-catching. They just need to see that it is completely out of place and that its presence in this specific setup demands an explanation. The object allegedly discovered in Annie Guthrie's unit was by all accounts exactly that kind of anomaly. Not because it looked incriminating at first glance, but because it clashed entirely with everything else in the room. Its existence inside that unit under those exact circumstances was a total mystery, a riddle that the surrounding clutter simply couldn't answer. This is the crucial link connecting the storage unit discovery to the broader case, which already features a pattern of deliberate behavior. They hid evidence deliberately and systematically in multiple places, including buried remains in the backyard. They found a signed document tucked among papers inside the house and another object buried near the property line. They even discovered a secret room built right into the home. This pattern of concealment wasn't centralized, it was highly distributed. It stretched across the yard inside the house and now apparently into the off-site storage unit Annie was paying for. What begins to emerge is the profile of someone who knew that no place was truly safe. So, they decided to spread the risk across multiple locations. Believing investigators would exhaust their efforts on the main property, never suspecting they would look elsewhere. And that strategy almost worked. The first site yielded key forensic clues, but investigators did not stop there tracing the money to that rented storage unit. They went beyond the obvious clue suggested the cover-up was not limited to those areas. And in that storage unit, they say something was out of place. Something that nothing around it could explain. An object whose presence forces the question, why was it here and when was it left behind? Time complicates things immensely because rented storage units generate their own paper trail. Contracts fixing the opening date, plus access logs showing exactly when the customer stepped inside, along with how long they stayed, plus security cameras revealing faces and entry times. A payment history revealing continuous rent or sudden gaps suggesting abandonment and a later return. Detectives meticulously analyzed every single piece of paper alongside the physical contents of the unit. They did not just focus on the contents, but on the exact moments of entry. They wanted to see if these visits matched the crucial days of the investigation. If someone visited the unit close to the date of Nancy's disappearance, either to hide something or to remove incriminating evidence. A storage unit visited right before or after a critical event carries a very different forensic value than one locked up for years. The access log makes it clear whether the space was being actively managed. If decisions were being made about what to store, they're reacting in real time to the latest developments. If Annie entered the storage unit near the date Nancy disappeared, that visit becomes a key piece of her behavior. This is the framework detectives are rebuilding meticulously. It joins the Walmart purchase, the financial transactions, the review of the will, the family dinner, and that first phone call. Documented behaviors framing the event that, according to police, took place right there. There is a golden rule in forensics that makes the history of an object just as crucial as the object itself. If there is concealment, the object's origin is crucial. It is not just about what it is, but where it came from, how it got there, and who handled it before it ended up there. Every stored object carries a past, either it was put in on day one of the rental or added at a later date. It could be the result of a planned decision made at a specific moment for a very particular reason. Or perhaps they moved it from another site when that original location became too dangerous to keep. When tracing its origin, investigators ask, does this item belong to the same chapter of Annie's life as the rest? Or does it come from another era, specifically a time frame that matches the worst moments of the disappearance? An object stored before Nancy disappeared tells a completely different story than one hidden after the fact. Storing it beforehand suggests planning a cold move, anticipating what was to come. Storing it afterward is a desperate reaction. It means they moved it because its original location was no longer safe. Both scenarios are crucial, but they reveal different intentions. Planning implies premeditation. A desperate reaction implies the object was closer to the scene and was moved when pressure began to build. Detectives analyze both possibilities as they try to understand exactly what they uncovered in there. That trail of rental contracts, deeds, receipts, and inventories forced officers to dig up files they had reviewed months ago. Old paperwork often takes on unexpected value as the case moves forward. What was examined in week 2 when everything was confusing looks radically different by month 5 with all the pieces connected. Details dismissed as routine, an address on a receipt, or monthly rent payments in a bank account become key evidence when a discovery inside the storage unit poses serious forensic dilemmas. Following the discovery in the unit, detectives once again dug into Annie's full financial history. Not because they had missed something before, but because the discovery opened a new perspective, a fresh question to ask about the evidence already in their hands. Whether something in the existing records, a receipt, a document, or an inventory, or some previous reference to stored belongings, provides context to what was found inside the unit and how it ended up there. That is how a serious investigation moves forward. Evidence does not exist in a vacuum. Every new find echoes back through the records, illuminating present details that were once impossible to interpret. The discovery in the storage unit forced investigators to re-examine the old files. Asking questions, those documents can now answer in ways once thought impossible. Let us talk about the items that usually draw attention in storage units during cases like this, because the details of what they seek are crucial. Documents are the first category. Legal paperwork, financial records, property deeds. The exact kind of material that already proved vital in this case, like that signed file found among the papers kept inside the house. A storage unit holding more paper trail evidence separate from the accessible home files represents a natural extension of that same investigative line. Physical objects with the potential to hold trace evidence are the second category. Items that could contain biological material, chemical residue, or physical proof of how they were used. Objects whose surfaces or physical condition tell a story that their mere presence keeps quiet. Pieces that a forensics lab would analyze thoroughly to discover exactly what they came into contact with. The third category includes items incompatible with lawful activity, things whose purpose has absolutely no innocent explanation in this context. In suspected homicide cases, this includes objects whose presence in the storage locker demands an answer that the rest of the contents simply cannot provide. Finding any of these categories under the control of a key suspect in a federal murder case presents a massive forensic threat. Reports describe the recovered item as entirely separate from the other belongings fitting squarely into one of those three described categories. An object whose presence in the storage locker was anomalous, completely out of place, and demanding answers. Bluntly put, this is what the storage unit discovery means for Annie Guthrie in this case. The primary property had already yielded highly relevant forensic evidence. The backyard find the hidden room, the signed document, the financial records. Everything consistently pointed to the house and its grounds as the primary places of concealment. But the storage unit broadens the picture. It suggests the concealment effort went far beyond the home. It implies whoever managed the cover-up knew the house would be searched, eventually keeping an off-site location as a backup plan. That level of distributed concealment shows serious sophistication. It requires access to multiple locations. And it takes the financial resources to keep renting that storage unit over a long period. Not to mention the organizational skills to track what goes where, what sits in the unit, what remains in the house, and what is buried in the yard. All of it managed without leaving loose ends or discrepancies between locations. The operational sophistication behind hiding evidence across a main house, its interior, and an off-site storage locker narrows the list of suspects capable of pulling it off. Not everyone can manage this level of logistics. It takes someone with the know-how, the access, the financial means, and the organizational capacity to maintain multiple hiding places at once. In this case, that description matches someone whose financial records, communication logs, and property connections investigators have been dissecting for 5 months now. That reported out-of-place item, the anomaly uncovered inside the storage unit, is the exact detail that will lock in the direction of the case or force a total shift in strategy. Forensically examining the item is the immediate next step. Whatever it is, specialists will scan its surface for trace evidence. Its composition will be documented. Its origin will be traced where it was manufactured, purchased, or acquired if possible. And its history will be pieced together to place it on the master timeline, determining when it entered the storage unit and why. If that analysis yields nothing, or if it turns out to have a perfectly innocent explanation, despite looking completely out of place in that unit, investigators will write it off as a dead end and move on. A legitimate breakthrough for the investigation. Not every anomaly is proof, but if analysis reveals paper trails or documentary connections, or physical features that tie the object to key facts, if what was found in the storage unit connects to the backyard, to the signed document, to the financial records, or any other thread in the evidence, then the discovery becomes structural, another point of convergence. In a case built on coincidences from the very start, this storage unit does not change the core direction of the investigation. That path was clear long before federal agents even stepped through the door. What it might actually change, however, is the integrity of the forensic scene. Whether the case against the guilty party rests solely on the property or a much broader documented trail of concealment, one stretching from that property to every single space controlled by Annie Guthrie. This is the full picture of the investigation, right as this new discovery comes into play. Remains supposedly recovered from the yard with DNA pending, a signed document on property interests found in the house. Financial analysis revealing constant pressure. Strange transactions Nancy was reviewing in her final days. The text message right after the family dinner. A hidden room in the house. An object buried near the property. A contradictory family story about the night Nancy disappeared. A late-night tipster suggesting the inner circle is fracturing. and now a strange object in a storage unit that investigators see as a serious threat. This is not some half-hearted investigation. It is a meticulous forensic portrait of a case in its final stage of assembly. Every location links to Annie Guthrie, the property, the inside of the house. The surrounding grounds and the off-site storage unit all have yielded something of value. Every clue, forensic, physical, digital, financial, documentary, or human feeds into this same picture. The storage unit discovery adds real geography to the cover-up narrative. It expands the documented footprint of what was hidden and where. And it tells investigators something crucial about whoever was running this. They were meticulous. They understood the risks. They scattered the evidence across multiple locations because they knew no single place was completely permanent. But the trouble with being so meticulous is it leaves a larger footprint of evidence, not a smaller one. More locations mean more forensic opportunities. More records mean more paper trails. More spaces mean more surfaces that could hold physical evidence. The sophisticated cover-up plan backfired entirely. It created multiple points of discovery instead of keeping the risk in one single controllable spot. The most striking thing about this discovery is not actually what the agents found. It is the possibility that something kept in a locker for an unknown amount of time, sealed away, forgotten by the world, and invisible when the investigation started, was waiting all this time to become part of the case. Storage units are where people put things they cannot let go of but cannot bear to keep close. It is where the fallout of hard choices sits quietly. Whatever Annie Guthrie hid in that storage unit, and whatever it represents. About the choices made in the months leading up to Nancy's disappearance, it has been sitting there, in the dark inside a climate-controlled room, that nobody in the public investigation was watching. Federal agents found it. And now whatever it is, it sits inside the file of a federal case that seems nearly complete. The case against the person responsible for Nancy Guthrie's death is being built from several angles at once. The property, the house, the finances, the documents, the messages, the witness statements. And now the storage locker. Every location has revealed something. Every forensic clue has played its part. And somewhere in the crossover of all these threads in the DNA tests, in the analysis of that strange object from the locker in the family's conflicting stories, and in the ongoing document analysis, the full picture is taking shape. It won't stay hidden for long.